The motion before us is the House would impose a BBC style impartiality requirement on all news platforms. Let me just time it up. Mm, okay, start. One important question that lays before us today is why is our society polarized so much? If you look at the world today, you see that news as well as society itself is very divided. People are living in their own echo chambers over social media, over news channels. You look at it, you look at stuff, people have their own opinion and they go by their own conformational bias, most of the times not interacting with other sort of differing opinions. Half of it, we believe, is due to news medias and news channels, partiality that has led to these sort of things. The model in itself is very clear. We will impose the impartiality requirement in the same way BBC does. So I don't think there's any further clarification needed on that part. Which news channels are we talking about? Who are the actors, especially in this debate? There are news channels that are extremely biased. For example, Republic in India by Arnab Goswami, or Fox News and journalists like Tucker Carlson, who specifically talk about a specific viewpoint, often at times deciphering most of the news and only focusing it and packaging it as one viewpoint. Um, I think this debate is highly relevant in both first word and the third word, specifically because the rise of populism and the given polarization of media, the media not being free anymore, has led to like this sort of situations. We see, as I already talked about, we see these echo chambers in social media videos of the news that we are seeing, or just news channels in itself, where one sort of news channel only talks about certain viewpoint and is only on progressing one sort of fan base. And because of that, because these people are living in their own echo chambers, they discarded the news channels and they only watch this particular group of news channels. Uh, we will give two particular arguments in this debate. The first is that this sort of policy will help in decreasing the overall polarization that has creeped into the society, which will have much larger impacts that we'll talk about. Uh, and this will ensure that all viewpoints are covered and not thrown away under the rug. And we'll talk about our stakeholders in that regard. The second argument we'll make is that this is going to make give more accountability to news, will benefit news in itself, and this improves democracy as a whole because news media is a very important part of democracy, and news is the only way we get information around the world. At first, let's go for the first argument. How does it help in decreasing the overall polarization that has creeped into the society? Um, Very important here, like, are the stakeholders we are looking at, right? We have two to three particular stakeholders that we believe in. The first one is, in particular, the society who are directly affected by the media, whether it's especially boomers who are like directly only consuming news from news channels by directly watching and only consuming one type of news, or whether it's other generations who happen to chance upon news that they're watching at their home, the parents are watching, or they're going over and seeing news in other format, whether on social media or something, seeing videos of Fox News, seeing videos of CNBC or BBC or these sort of things online. And that's how it mostly works. Often at times, like the boomers or like the older generation might be influencing the viewpoints of the younger generation, and often at times it shapes the generation. So we think like anything we project to them through news media, it directly involves whole of society and the people who are watching it. Um, so firstly, like, it's very important to understand that we directly and indirectly consume these sort of news even when we are choosing not to. We go to shops, the news channel is running on the shops and it's playing there and we are watching it, or we are in the waiting rooms, or we are at the gyms. We consume news media even without actively understanding that. And we see that there's this level of constant bashing. These news channel bash other news channel, and often at times they just disregard the opinion of what other news channels are doing, and they just like do this. If you look at it, like we have with respect to us, this being done by both liberals as well as the people on the side of conservatives who aren't even aware of why such disagreement exists, right? Sometimes the argument being made by conservative and the opinion they hold in such regards is not even what liberals consider to be completely stupid. It's not stupid at all because there might be some reasoning to it. Same for conservatives because they think, oh, their opinion is based on one, two, three, this reason in particular, in case where it might be stemming from something very absolute that they don't understand. Uh, look, if you look at it, like, this sort of bashing happens because the news that you're watching is only covering one sort of framework, one sort of viewpoint, and taking a very partial judgment on it. And because you live in these echo chambers, you only are consuming news by, say, Fox Media, or consuming news only by, say, the Republic in India, and you're only watching that news channel, so your understanding sort of differs around because you think the other news channels are not portraying news, and that in itself causes a very disfigured way of watching the news. The level of polarization keeps increasing because the opinion they are showing you is what you actually believe, because you're not even listening to other sort of opinions. The second actor that we think about in this perspective is the people who are involved in those news, right? Whether often at times they don't get justice, often at times they receive public backlash, often at times they receive things like death threats, or they get a very direct effect because most of the times the news channel portrays them in a several way, and the fan base on the news channel who don't understand what exactly is happening because of their conformational bias, they start bashing on the news channel. Often at times they try to obstruct justice, and often at times government are able to like push through and like even harass these people even more because their fan base is watching these news channels, and they like this gains a very widespread support in this regard. Whether you want to look at the case of George Cicero Meher in Drexel, who actually made a comment, a reference to the white genocide theory of the right wing, the alt right, which is a very popular theory, and instead got bashed without people actually knowing what he was referring to, and he had to step out of his position and he had to resign from Drexel. Or whether you look at the JNU students in India who have constantly been attacked by the government on cases of sedition, etc., even though the protest they were making for regarding Afzal Guru was very, very nuanced in that regard. Or we look at the currently bashing of Riya Chakraborty in India, who's like constantly suffering from this sort of regards. The second thing it does is give more accountability to news, which improves democracy as a whole. Currently, people either disregard a news channel or have their own hierarchy, and this causes no accountability in general. News channel can satirically disregard what the other news channel is doing or even bash it. Oftentimes, we are reluctant to consume news that is from a channel we don't consume, and this, in regards, causes like the other channel to just like not even cover it, and they don't have any accountability, any reasoning to like even cover the other part because they say, oh, they are talking about this because they're a left-based news channel, or they're like the socialism supporters. Since news channels don't take viewpoints, they actually have to compete now because they can't just discard what other channel is doing because all the news channels are impartial now. This impartiality is imposed. And now what that does is by saying that they can't just like disregard having to cover that news by saying, oh, they are a left base or something, because this sort of mediation allows for like more accountability in that regard. And this mediation also allows everyone access to news because not everyone can watch it on TV. We also have people who like are homeless, or people who don't have a television at home, or who just consume it while living on a waiting rooms or some things like that. And so they no more have to be on the mercy of, say, the Facebook algorithm, which is only going to depict one type of news to them, or like they don't have to be on mercy of like just the place they're watching the news into, because they can't just watch it at some other place. So in that regard, we think we achieve a lot on our side of the debate. Proud to propose.